Bring to the podium at this time to close our second great guest keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Ken Druck.
How about the adversity that occurs after you've had lunch and you're listening to the second keynote speaker? What do we do with that adversity? So, first thing I want to invite you to do is to stretch. At the core of all turning adversity into opportunity is self-care, is self-compassion, is permission to stretch and let go, and even crank out a yawn if you have it. Get up, hug a neighbor if you need some human contact, talk to somebody, tell them the highlight. There's a hug right up there, I see it. Tell them the highlight of what today, what do you want to take, what seed do you want to take from the conversations that have occurred today, that you want to pour water on, that you want to nourish, that you want to grow into something, into the higher, better, fuller version of you. What do you want to take from today to grow into the higher, better version of the organization that you represent, or the school that you're studying at? Think about that. This is the point in the day where we start owning what we've heard. The parts of our own courage, faith, understanding, intelligence, the parts of waking up that occur for all of us, which is why we come to conferences, to wake each other up, to deepen our sense of compassion and sensitivity, and to hone our plan, how we're going to focus the passion we have, the energy we have, the commitment and dedication we have to what we're doing into action that we can stand back from and feel so proud of that we took. I'm so honored to be here speaking with you. You know, as Tim shared, years ago, I had a chance to find out about this organization. I've been running my own organization for 19 years, since the death of my own daughter, Jenna. Jenna was studying abroad on a program called Semester at Sea. You know, when they get on the ship and they go from continent to continent, and they have the trip of a lifetime. And that's, as I said goodbye to her at LAX, that's what I said. Sweetheart, you're going to come back and tell me everything you've experienced. He said, Dad, the world is so much bigger than Southern California. And she brought things. She packed up. Some people pack up clothes. She packed up little things she bought at Costco. It was Price Club at the time. And she packed up all pencils and chocolate kisses and little trinkets that she could give out to who? To the children, wherever she went. So we said goodbye, and she went on the trip of a lifetime. I said, sweetheart, this is going to be a launching pad for the rest of your great life. And she'd already had an amazing life. At age 21, she was voted one of America's future leaders. She attended the President's Leadership Institute. She touched thousands and thousands of lives and hearts at age 21. She was a leader. And so when she passed in a bus accident outside, not far from the Taj Mahal, some of you were watching CNN, 19 years ago, March 27th, and you saw that a bus overturned and 4 beautiful young women, college students, died in the accident. That was my daughter. So I received the call that is every parent's nightmare. And for 19 years, I decided that what would be my path? Anybody that tells you, and I love what April shared, anybody that tells you that the wind hasn't gone out of their sails just isn't telling the truth. Because a part of us that we don't often talk about, because we're ashamed to even admit it, the part of us on the other side of the part of us that loves life, that has a reverence for living, that feels so gifted and blessed to have this life with all of its miracles, all of its blessings, is a part of us that when our hearts are ripped out, just wants to give up. We want to go back to wherever we were before we were here. It's like, just send me back, because I consider it to be a sentence in hell to live out the rest of my life in pain, in this kind of choiceless, inescapable pain. And so I decided, and I can almost hear my daughter saying, Dad, use what you know and what you're going to learn to help other families that have to go through this hell. Use it. And so I started the Jenna Druck Center. I started it and I went through the motions, because there was a part of me that just had my heart ripped out. And 450 at least families directly come to the Jenna Druck Center for services every year. Unfortunately, there are over 700 children die in San Diego County every year. You know, we can multiply those rates up as we go up the coast. Where do those families go? What do they do? Especially since this is an area nobody wants to talk about. It's like, go out and try to market a program. And the board here, all the board members, the Untouchables will tell you, try to market grief and bereavement. That's the last thing people want to talk about. They recoil and say, hey, I'm so sorry for your loss. Get me out of here. Get me in another conversation. We live in a society that is not grief literate. We live in a society that teaches us there's a pill for every pain, a diversion for every moment of emptiness, a fix for every problem, when it isn't so. As April told you earlier, sometimes it just flat out sucks. And we better make it safe for the people, whether they've suffered life losses like me, they've lost somebody they love, or whether they're suffering living losses. Years ago, I wrote a column for Maria Shriver, and the idea has taken off that we have a grief response when we suffer living losses. What are the living losses of our lives? April just told you about one, the loss of innocence, the betrayal of a mother, a divorce, domestic violence, somebody crosses a boundary, somebody you love is diagnosed or has an accident, somebody you love is deployed, somebody you love is incarcerated. These are all living losses, and the list goes on and on. It's endless. So as we face into, and that's the object here, as we face into the losses of our lives, how do we honor what's happened? Because it's kind of like Groundhog Day for those of us who've gone through these kinds of losses. And every single person in here, if I asked each one of you, you could identify a time of terrible adversity where your heart ached, where you hurt so much inside you didn't know where to turn, where you suffered such a devastating loss you didn't know how you were going to go on, and how you would repair this and live out the rest of your life. And so Groundhog Day, for all of us suffering adversity, is that we look down the path over here. And for me, that was looking down a path of despair. Now, there's no way you don't experience despair. Part of healing is processing despair. If we don't process our sorrow, if we don't give it constructive and healthy expression, what do you suppose happens to it? We become indifferent to the pain of other people. We become the dumbed-down version of us. We become lesser. So on that path of despair, if that's what we choose, if that's what we choose to feed, if that's where we choose to live, if that's how we choose to occupy our thoughts in thinking about what's been lost and what's missing. And I saw myself, and I saw at the end of that path of despair, both of my daughters, my earth and angel daughters. My earth daughter lives in Little Italy in San Diego. And she's getting married this summer, by the way. Talk about a joy. My heart's exploding with joy. But I looked down that path, and excuse my expression if it offends you, but I saw both of my daughters pissing on my grave. Dad, you made your pain the center of the universe. You made it the center of your existence. We love you, but you were lost to us. I look down the other path, and at the end of that path, I see both of my daughters saying, "Dad, we're so proud of you. We would have understood if you had just given up. Your heart hurt so much. But you fought your way back into life, one breath at a time. It's not even one day at a time. And you chose a path of honoring. You chose to make love the central organizing principle of your life. Your love of us." So I started thinking about this honoring. The path of honoring. And there are 5 parts to the path of honoring. Let's start with self-care. Losing a child and going through a devastating time of life and the adversity that many of you have suffered and that you were at the epicenter of. The first thing you do is survive. The first honoring is your own survival. I realize, especially for us guys, that the least utilized word in the English language is what? It starts with H. Help. Help. I need help. I want to honor my child. I want to give them a dignified funeral and burial. I need your help. Losing a child, the medical equivalent would be you in the ICU with tubes in and out of you on life support. Because that's what you feel like. You feel like you're dying. Or you've already died and there's some other part of you that's still walking around, going through the motions. So self-care is critical. Now for those of us that are harshly self-critical, some of us have grown and cultivated a huge internal critic. We use internal criticism. We criticize ourselves. We have that admonishing finger wagging in our face every second. What have you done? What haven't you done? Why haven't you done it? We have terrible patterns of internal criticism. How do you suppose that flies in deep grief? For a person at the very time that you need a hand up, that you need a hand of compassion. You've got a finger wagging in your face. So the first honoring is self-care. And at the core of self-care is the practice of self-compassion. If I were to give all of you a self-compassion test now, how would you rate? How kind are you to yourself when you're down? How encouraging? How gentle, supportive, patient, allowing are you to go through a process of healing, of fighting your way back into life, of finding your way out of the ashes of Plan A and beginning to cultivate a vibrant Plan B. So self-care is number 1. The second honoring has to do with processing the loss. Processing the loss. Some of you work in this field. It's what you've mastered. And it's what I'm so grateful that you are out in this community helping people process the loss. Jenna used to have a saying. She'd say, Daddy, be with me. Be with. She cut the me out. She said, be with. What did my daughter mean at age 2.5, 3 years old when she said, Daddy, be with? It meant, Daddy, put down the newspaper. Daddy, don't try to multitask when you're with me. Daddy, be with me. One of the most powerful experiences we can have as human beings is the feeling of being understood. When we look into another person's eyes and we see that they get it. They're not trying to figure us out and fix us. That engineer mentality that so many of us are raised, that it's our job to figure out and fix, rather than to simply be with, be a witness, to meet somebody where they are without unsolicited advice, just to simply be with them, to be that healing presence that listens, that helps that person find within themselves the answers. I think the smartest thing I ever did as a dad was to learn to ask my daughters, sweetheart, what do you think you should do? What are your options here? To help generate their critical thinking. What are your options? Even if they sound crazy, and to make it safe instead of jumping in with advice or a quick fix when there was none. I remember Jenna coming home one day in high school. She was a junior in high school, and one of the girls in her friendship circle had taken her own life. And she saw me coming down the hall, and she said, Dad, she put the big stop sign on. You can't fix this. And all over again, she was saying, Daddy, just be with me. And have the faith and the trust that I have it within myself to summon the courage and the strength and the understanding to wrap my heart around this, to wrap my mind around it, and to somehow go on as the resilient, stronger, better, smarter, more authentically honest and real version of myself. And that's what she did. Processing a loss means that we have to develop a whole new respect for something. We've learned, especially in our male culture, and one of the first books I wrote was called The Secrets Men Keep. That was a 3-time Oprah book. We went on Oprah with an all-male audience. If some of you were sitting and you remember the days of big hair, remember the days of big hair? Oprah had big hair, I had big hair. And we did the Oprah show on The Secrets Men Keep. But one of the things we discovered is that as a man, to feel is to fail. If we see anything but anger in any one of you the male faces in this room, we're going to demote you on the male scale to a lesser of a man status. Especially if you have tears. Okay? Because we're supposed to stay forever strong. And what do we do? What do we learn to do? And many of us, and a lot of women, have followed us right into this trap. We've learned to shoot the messenger. We get these brilliant, miraculous systems called our emotional system. And we have respiratory systems. We have these brilliant systems. How do we get the capacity to function at this level, to heal ourselves? And we have these emotional systems. And they send up signals to us. They send, because we have this radar system. And it says, hey, you're feeling sad. Or you're feeling really hurt. Or I can see how frustrating this is to you. I can see how impatient you're growing. I can see how your heart is exploding with joy. Your daughter's getting married. And on, they send up signals. What do? When we don't like the signal, we shoot the messenger. The messenger is just a messenger. We're not prisoners to our emotions, but we can surely learn how to read them and to process them, to give them constructive expression. That is the way we honor our loss. That is the way we attain resilience. That is the alchemy. We find a trusted, safe confidant who we can let down, who is not going to run away, who will listen. We find support in the people that we're working with, the professionals, that hopefully aren't fixed on giving us quick fixes and advice. And we find it within ourselves to silence the inner critic and to listen to ourselves compassionately. That's the formula for resilience. What's another honoring? Another honoring you've heard all day today. Think about it. John and Judy, April, so many of you, the other speakers. We all have deep wounds. We all walk with a limp. If you could come close enough to me, you'd see sorrow in my eyes. The sorrow that's still there. I miss Jenna every day of my life. We walk with a limp, we have a wound. What do we do with that? We do good in their name. We honor their life and spirit by paying it forward. All that we've learned, it's another form of honoring. Pay it forward, do good in their name. Do good things in their name. And the Jenna Druck Center, its program helping families who are grieving, and its Girls Leadership Program are both ways of saying, I love you, Jenna. I carry forth your work. You're with me always. And if you guys went on the website, you'd also see that Jenna is listed as our CAO. You know what a CAO is. Chief, say it, Angelic Officer. That's right. Because she's working from the other side. Finally, the way of honoring the most courageous thing for us to do to go on. Because in the beginning, my feeling was, how dare my daughter just died? How dare I go out and enjoy a good meal? How dare I have one moment of pleasure in my life? How can my life go on? And her life has been lost to her. That future has been lost to her. How do I go forward? Well, the most courageous thing we do and the most honorable thing is to write new chapters in our life. Write new chapters in our life. Find out what gives our life purpose and meaning and passion and energy. How can we contribute? How can we take what we've learned on our trip to the bottom of pain, on our journey through adversity, and use it to benefit other people? Finding your way back into life, joyfulness, because, sometimes I picture it this way. If Jenna's watching, is she watching saying, Dad, I love how miserable you are today. You're so unhappy and joyless. It just lets me know how much you love me. I'm convinced you love me. Just keep being joyless, Waste away the rest of your life. Or does Jenna take joy in every moment of life that I fight my way back into? In my ability to see beauty again, my ability to be faithful and hopeful, my ability to gather strength and even greater courage. We come into this life with a certain amount of courage, but it's our job to build that courage. Every new season of life demands of us another level of courage. Anybody here turned 40 this year, or turning 30, or 50, or 60, or 70, or, yeah, guess what? You got to upgrade the courage operating system. You got to upgrade the software and even get a couple of apps in there that say, here's where I am on the treadmill. Here's where I am. Here's what I'm facing in this new season of life. I have to summon the courage. You know where we get that courage from often? We get it from taking inventory with gratitude. The gratitude that we have to be able to sit in an auditorium in an afternoon like this. The gratitude of having an organization like the Untouchables in our community, proudly. I talk about this organization in other parts of the country. I was telling families, I'm helping the families in Newtown, Connecticut. 20 families had their children murdered. We're helping them. And I was telling them about the Untouchables. How Unforgettables. Untouchables too. Talking about Untouchables. We got in late last night and I went into Albertsons. And I waited for a half an hour at the checkout counter because there were all these kids going to Coachella. Tell me about Coachella. And the guy who was checking them out was flirting with them. So I'm standing there with, a couple of things. Some bottled water. But telling them about the Unforgettables. Gratitude for the pride that we have in what we're doing in our community. For all of you, I wish I had a chance to find out about the good work that all of you are doing, because it is an honoring. And I'll leave you with this thought. And by the way, many of the things, as Tim shared a little bit before, many of the things that I haven't been able to share with you, I will share with you outside in the form of this book. Do I have a minute to read something? Okay. For me, this is a lot of what resilience is about. Early one morning, 19 years ago, I drove my daughter Jenna to the airport where she was flying to meet her semester at sea study abroad program. Jenna would be living on a ship, traveling around the world for the next several months. And as we walked to the gate, I told her, "Sweetheart, you're going on the trip of a lifetime." "Daddy, I'm a little scared," she confessed. "I've never been this far away from my family for this long." I was one of the few people that she would say that to, because to the world, she was a pillar of strength. And I said, "Sweetheart, I'm a little scared too, but this trip is going to be a launching pad for the rest of your life. I can't wait for you to come home and to tell us about the places you've been and the people you've met." And Jenna and I tearfully hugged and kissed each other goodbye. And minutes later, I watched her flight disappear into the morning sky. As I shared with you, I never saw my daughter again. Fast forward 10 years, I'm at the airport with my daughter Steffi, who's going on a tour of the great cities of Italy. Steffi has struggled horribly since her sister's death. Her sister was her hero, and this trip represents a triumph of courage. It's everything in my power to hold back tears, knowing the assurances I had given to her sister were empty promises. My heart is tied in knots. Steffi may be going on the trip of her lifetime, but I can't say so. I can't even say she's going to come home. All I can do is hope and pray and manage to say, "Sweetheart, have a great time. Please come home safe. I love you so much." Steffi knew what I was thinking. She gave me a reassuring smile. She hugged me extra tight. She reassured me, "Daddy, everything's going to be all right. Daddy, I love you." And her plane soon disappeared into the morning sky, and I walked slowly to my car. Closing the car door, the tears came. I'd sent another precious daughter out to the world. Like Jenna, she would be at the mercy of forces beyond my control or understanding. Fate, luck, gravity, karma, I really didn't care. All I wanted was my daughter to come back home. 10 days and 3 hours later, Steffi's flight landed safely back in San Diego, and we cried tears of joy, talked for hours about her adventures in Italy. That's not where she met her boyfriend, her fiance. And that night, as I got into bed and turned on the evening news, I could breathe a sigh of relief. I watched as the wives and husbands, parents and children of men and women leaving for Iraq said goodbye to their beloved husbands, sons, and daughters. My heart ached for them, knowing some of them would not come home. The families of those brave men and women they were sending into the world were at the mercy of life's terms, and they would not be breathing for quite some time. What starts in life as one of the extraordinary, unconditional forms of love that becomes the deepest unspeakable sorrow seeks to become love again. And so it's your love, your dedication, your compassion and commitment that moves us forward, that allows us to heal, that allows us to activate this brilliant, incredible, resilient spirit within each one of us. I thank you for the opportunity to share with you. I look forward to meeting you out in the back. And my blessings to every one of you for the good works that you're doing and to the Unforgettables. Thank you.